Season 2 of Master Duels has just started, and you're probably thinking to yourself, what are the best decks? Okay, do I switch decks? Do I build another one? I need the answers. Well, my name is Susu, and I'm here to give you some answers, okay? We're going to be going over the top 10 unbeatable meta decks in Master Duels as of currently right now of Season 2. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. The first deck on my list is Lyrilisk. So let's take a look at this deck profile and kind of see why it's so good. Now, the Lyrilisk cards are usually straight gas and mainly pure extenders, right? If you open Cobalt Sparrow, you're pretty much going full combo anyways. And this deck has extremely good starters like Fractal. You have Tanky at 3, which is insane. Bird Call is probably one of the most insane cards I've ever read. Let's read it together. It says, take one Lyrilisk monster from your deck, either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. And trust me, they do a lot of things in the graveyard. Then you can special summon one Lyrilisk monster with a different name from your hand. Like, this is absolutely insane. If you open this and another bird name, you're already winning, right? And cards like Turquoise Warbler basically special summon anyways, so you can do all of this without normal summoning. So you can never get interrupted on a normal summon because you just simply don't have to, right? And this deck also allows you to play Maxi, Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, and Nibiru as well, and you have a searchable DD Crow. So if you know you're going up against a deck where they have a singular combo piece like Synchro Eldic, you can just simply DD Crow their Despot 003 the moment it touches the graveyard, right? And this deck also has amazing cards like Samorg, the Bird of Sovereignty, which will summon you out your Mist Apex Avian whatever, which is basically an Omni Negate, and it goes back to your hand. Or you can even play, the floodgate variant where you summon out Wind Barrier Statue, which is absolutely insane, right? This deck also plays the Tri-Brigade engine, which allows you to end on Tri-Brigade Shirag, the Ominous Omen, which is a really good card because it's a non-targeting banish, and when it goes to the graveyard, it adds you a card from your deck, right? Like, it's absolutely insane. If you're looking for a deck that can play through multiple hand traps and is extremely consistent, I highly recommend Tri-Brigade Lyrilisk. The second deck on my list has to be Magician Pendulums. Big shout out to Triv Gaming for this deck list, okay? So, let's kind of talk about Magician Pendulums. Now, this deck is extremely consistent. Now, you're playing cards like Triple Upstart, Triple Alert of Darkness, and Into the Void, so you seeing your cards is not a problem, right? And this deck also runs amazing cards like Odd Eye's Vortex Dragon, which is essentially an Omni Negate. You can make Borlo Savage Dragon, but not too often. You're also making Appaloosa. And in Master Duels, we have Electromite to 1, which is probably the best card for literally any Pendulum deck. Electromite is absolutely insane, right? And then you have cards like Supreme King Dragon Dark Rebellion, and you're even allowed to play Baguska. So if you generally do get hand trapped into Oblivion, as long as you can Pendulum summon 2 4s onto the field, you can make Baguska and just pray. And generally, most of the time, Baguska is good enough, right? Where this deck really shines is turn 3, right? So after turn 1, you put up this Infinite Negate board, they somehow break it. The deck is so good that you can easily get into Selene, into Access Code, into OTK, because there's generally your opponent has to spend cards to kind of break the board and kind of set up 1, maybe 2 negates. But the thing about Pendulums is they can play through multiple negates and still OTK you. So if you guys want a really fun deck played by Chadge, and you got some URs laying around because the deck is really expensive, try Magician Pendulums. All right, big shout out to Triff Gaming. Okay, so we can't talk about the best deck without talking about Virtual Worlds. All right, so Virtual Worlds is a deck where we can play True King of all Calamities, and on top of that, we can also play cards like Divine, Arsenal, AA Zeus, right? This deck is really, really good, but it does brick sometimes. Like, your best opening hand is Qualoon Lulu, and you're playing 3 of each with 3 desires, and sometimes you still end up bricking. But we are allowed to play, one of the best hand traps in the game in the form of Psy-Frame Gear Gamma, which is really, really powerful because it's a negate and a destroy, right? We're also playing Triple Maxi and Double Ash Blossom and Double Imperm to kind of round out our hand trap lineup. But the rest of this deck is pure engine. And in Master Duels, E-Telly is at 2, but even if it was at 3, I'm not sure if we would be playing 3. But generally, like, this is a very, very competitive deck profile and a deck that I've myself have been playing in Master Duels, okay? In the extra deck, we have cards like Cloud Castle, which bring back a 9, which is generally our way into True King of all Calamities. Or another really good card is Phantom Fortress Enter Blathnir, which basically you can banish a card your opponent controls, a random card on their hand, or a random card in your opponent's graveyard, or banish the top card of your opponent's deck face up. So this card is really good because it also acts like a hand rip, which is really, really nice. Generally speaking, if you're going for game and you need to either clear the board or make sure your opponent doesn't play next turn, Enter Blathnir is a really, really good card. As well as Utopia Beyond. Let's read this card together. This card says, if this card is XC summoned, the attack of all monsters your opponent currently controls becomes 0, which is really nice if you're going for a game and they left a lot of monsters in attack position. So the deck has a lot of utility, a lot of survival, and some recursion, right? Because Shen Shen can come back every turn, assuming you have the names, or rather the attributes / types in your graveyard. Okay, so if you guys want to try a really fun deck where the combos aren't that linear and you can end on a very fun dragon, I highly consider picking up Virtual Worlds. Okay, so the next deck on my list is one that I really don't want to recommend, but you generally can't say anything due to how powerful it is. Okay, so the deck is Ellic. Now the Ellic deck is really, really powerful because generally as a trap deck, you don't really care if your opponent puts up infinite negates because you can just pretty much set 5 and pass anyways. But going first, this deck really, really does shine, right? You are playing cards like Triple Skill Drain, which basically if your opponent is playing a combo heavy deck where, you know, most of the combo pieces are smaller monsters, they're not really getting over a 3,500 Golden Lord that cannot be destroyed by card effects, right? We're also playing cards like Imperial Order, which is insane, and really powerful blowout cards like Torrential Tribute. Now, Torrential Tribute is really, really good in any trap deck right now, because if you are playing against a combo deck, a lot of them do simply die to Torrential Tribute. In this deck list, I've decided to play Waking the Dragon because we are playing the extra variant. So generally speaking, a lot of people, because it's the best of one, are always mating back row hate in their decks. So even if all you see is Waking the Dragon, if you summon Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon, which, you know, by the way, this card is absolutely insane, or you can even summon Ellic the Mad Golden Lord, which again is a Towers, right? So let's read this card together. This card says, this card's name becomes Ellic the Golden Lord while on the field, which means your Conquistador and Hakuero, they both get their effects, okay? This cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect. You contribute 1 zombie monster, then target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and take control of it, but it cannot attack or activate its effects this turn, which means you can attack and activate it next turn. But that's not even the best part, right? Like, can't be destroyed by battle or card effect. This thing has 3,800 attack and 3,500 defense. There are not a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh cards that can simply get over this, even under skill drain. Okay, so I want you to kind of keep that in mind. So if you guys really want a grindy deck where, you know, you really have to kind of carefully flip your cards over, I do highly recommend Ellic, as much as I really don't want to recommend Ellic. Okay, so the next deck on our list is going to be Prank Kids. Now, Prank Kids is a deck where the engine is like pretty small, but you play an insane amount of starters, and this deck is basically a 1-card starter to begin with, right? And because the deck is so small, you can fit an amazing amount of hand traps and cards that will keep you alive if you go second, like cards like Forbidden Droplet. You're playing Infinite Impermanence, Ash, Maxi, and thank God we have Call by the Grave at 2 in Master Duels. So even if you do get hand trapped on a kit effect, you can definitely use Call by the Grave to dodge it. We're playing cards like Instant Fusion, which is insanely good because we can summon out Prank Kid's Rocket Ride to play that way, right? And one of the main, kind of one of the main benefits of playing this deck is having access to this boss monster in the form of Prank Kid's Battle Butler. So you can basically read this card as Raigeki because that's essentially what it does. It tributes itself to destroy all monsters your opponent controls, right? But because Meow Meow Moo is at 3, and Meow Meow Moo has this effect. It reads, if a Prank Kids monster you control would tribute itself to activate its effects during your opponent's turn, you can banish this card you control or from your graveyard instead, meaning you get to keep a 3,000 beat stick after you've nuked your entire opponent's board. And with cards like Prank Kids Place, your Battle Butler is getting insanely large. So if you want to play, again, a really consistent deck, and I know you guys are seeing a pattern here, right? Like every really good deck is really consistent, but Prank Kids is extremely consistent. So again, if you guys want to play a consistent deck that's really fun, and the artwork is pretty cute, I highly recommend picking up Prank Kids. So the next deck is going to be Atemancipators. Now, this deck is extremely combo heavy, but your end board is kind of unbreakable. Now, let's talk about why this deck is so insane, right? Block Dragon. This card is banned, but unbanned in Master Duels. But let's read this card together. This card says, cannot be normal summoned or sent. Must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing 3 earth monsters from your hand and or graveyard. Now, the next effect doesn't matter. This effect is why this card is banned in the TCG. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add up to 3 rock monsters from your deck to your hand whose totals level equal 8. That effect is absolutely insane, okay? And another really cool thing about this deck is, even if you get Nibiru, you simply don't care because you just straight up play through it with all your Atemancipator cards, because the Atemancipator cards read, if you control a rock monster except, itself, you can special summon this card. And after you special summon that card, you can excavate, so you're literally digging up rocks to special summon a rock that you've dug up, right? Now, this deck also does play a small Prank Hits engine because Meow Meow Moo is a freaking rock. Meow Meow Moo is a freaking rock. So that's why we do play a small Prank Hits engine, which is really, really nice. Also, this end board is insane because generally you're ending on Appaloosa, Naturia Beats, Borreload Savage Dragon. So Nat Beats, if you've never read it before, it says when a spell card is activated, quick effect, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And it's not once per turn, it's not once per chain, it's wildly insane, okay? Another reason this deck is really, really powerful right now is because we have a card called Union Carrier, and with Union Carrier, we can equip the card called Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. So let's read why this card is so good. This card says, while this card is equipped to a monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. First of all, so essentially, this deck can lock your opponent out of special summoning from the extra deck. You have Appaloosa for 4 negates. You have infinite spell negates. You have an Omni negate, as well as whatever hand traps you may have opened, or the Imperial Order or the Call By that you've opened, right? Because generally, most 1 to 2 card combos can end you on that final board. So if you guys want to play like an insanely difficult combo heavy board that's slightly RNG based, I really do recommend this deck. It's really, really fun and it's extremely competitive. Okay, so the next deck on my list is going to be Drytrons. Now, there's not a lot to say about this deck because generally your end board is going to be Herald of Ultimateness with 6 negates because we are playing double Ava, as well as Vanity's Ruler. Vanity's Ruler says it cannot be special summoned and your opponent cannot special summon monsters. So this card is insanely insane. It doesn't, sorry, that didn't make much sense. But even with a board of 2 things on the field, your opponent generally does not play. The one downside to this deck is you do need 2 kind of Drytron names to play, or a way into Beatrice to dump a Drytron into your graveyard. But because we have Ben 10 at 3, this deck is really, really consistent. And at the least, you can make an ultimateness with maybe 2-3 negates. But because the deck is so consistent, because you're playing 21 starters, I really don't see you breaking too bad, right? Also, if you do end up going second, normal summon Diviner Sent Entist does break a lot of boards. And if you do open a hand that's straight gas, you can pump through like 3-4 negates quite easily. Also, we aren't playing really any hand trap other than Max C, but Herald of the Orange Light does act like a hand trap, essentially a gamma because it negates and destroys, right? Your main extenders are going to be Drytron Mu Beta Fafnir, which can dump a Drytron name into your graveyard, and you have access to really powerful cards like Zeus as well. And Beatrice, being able to Foolish Burial any card in the game is also widely utilized to kind of, push through, the multiple negates, right? So if you guys want to play a consistent deck that can literally put up quite infinite negates, I really do highly recommend Drytrons. Okay, so if you're wondering where the waifus are in this list, here we are. So the next deck on our list is Sky Strikers. Now let's talk about this deck because there is a lot to talk about, but really not that much. Now, we do have Engage to 2, which is absolutely insane. The fact that this card is not once per turn makes this card extremely good. So this card says, if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, add 1 Sky Striker card from your deck to your hand, except itself. Then, if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can draw a card. It's literally Pot of Greed, but better because you can search whatever you want and then draw a free card, right? Now, This deck can easily put multiple spells in the graveyard turn 1 because what do you know? Upstart Goblin is at 3. This card literally says draw 1 card, then your opponent gains 1,000 life points. And again, we generally don't care about life points because once we start out advantaging our opponent, it simply doesn't matter, right? Now this card, this deck also plays really good cards like Sky Striker, Mecha Widow, Anchor, which basically takes your opponent's monsters if you have more than 3, but generally used as a negate. We are also playing triple infinite impermanence, right? The one thing that does hurt is Kagari to 1, because if you get DD Crowed on Kagari, or you know, you lose access to Kagari, you can't really add back the spells from your graveyard. But other than that, you do have access to the Hulk combo. Hulk will summon you Effect Veiler, and then Effect Veiler and Hulk will get you into Selene, and then Selene will summon you back the Effect Veiler so you can go into Access Code Talker. Now, this deck is really consistent, but it does suck because sometimes you don't get to play if you don't open Sky Striker Ace Ray or the Rose or the Hornet Drones, right? So if you don't open any of those and you've drawn 4 cards and you're still not seeing it, then you're pretty much SOL, all right? But when you do see, you know, Ray or Rose or Hornet Drones, you generally are chilling because Ray is an absolutely insane card because it tributes itself for cost and then it comes back if they clear your link monster. Okay, so if you guys do want to play a really fun deck where the interactions are very kind of thought-provoking, I do recommend this deck. I believe this deck has an above 80% win rate. I mean, all the decks have an above 80% win rate, but this one in particular is pretty fun to play. Okay, so the next deck is going to be Going Second Pure Zodiacs. Now, this deck is basically Zeus Turbo because you can make it like a 6 material Zeus, which is absolutely insane, but you do lose to a singular Imperm. But the point is we are going second, right? So we are playing a bunch of Going Second blowout cards like Lightning Storm, like Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, Dark Ruler, Evenly Matched, and Forbidden Droplets. And most importantly of all, if we're going against Drytrons, we are playing 9 Kaijus. So the chance of us seeing a like one of 9 cards in a 40 card deck in a 5 card opening hand is like almost 2 Kaijus a starting hand, which is really nice because all we need to see is 1 normal summon, right? And we generally don't normal summon at all other than our initial normal summon, right? And we're also playing triple Pot of Desires because we are playing 3 of everything minus the 1 brick in the deck, which is double or nothing. So generally, if they do clear Zeus and you don't have a way to game, double or nothing into Utopia double and then Utopia gets you to 10,000 damage, right? So if you generally set up your Zeus and, you know, you've broken apart the, you know, your opponent's board, Zeus should get you there. But if it doesn't, double or nothing will definitely get you there as well. But if you banish it off of Desires, then you are SOL. And if you draw it, it doesn't really work because you can't get into Utopia double, but... or sorry, you can't get into Utopia, but it's still really good because it'll beef up your Utopia to 5,000, which can also help you, you know, kind of eke out those few extra life points for a game, okay? And finally, we are at the final and the best deck. Now, this is the deck that got me to Plat 1 twice in both seasons. And I have a more in-depth deck profile here over on the channel, so I'll have it like somewhere in the upper or somewhere in the corner, okay? So this deck is really good for a couple of reasons, right? You're playing cards like Dimension Shifter, which will generally end most combo decks turns, right? You're playing blowout cards like Interrupted Kaiju Slumber and Lightning Storm, and your main baddie, Grand Maju the Aiza, is one hell of a card, right? Because this card gains attack and defense equal to the number of your banished cards times 400. So if I Pot of Desires once, it's 4,000. And then if I Gizmek, that's another 3,200. And Eater of Millions allows me to banish up to 15 cards from my extra deck, which is absolutely insane. And in the extra deck, we're also playing cards like Draglublion, which will help summon us number 100 Numeron Dragon, which in itself will have, after you use the effect, 9,000 attack, right? And we're also playing 6 Kaijus. I might bump up the Kaijus to like maybe 9 and throw in 3 more, but generally I usually do see 1 in my opening hand. Now, this deck is a little bit expensive, but definitely has all the tools you need to get to Plat 1 insanely quickly, especially, you know, when you're playing in the lower ranks. This deck will help you clear those lower ranks insanely fast, and once you do get to Plat 2 and Plat 3, it does become a little harder, but if you open a decent hand, you're generally winning that game anyway. So if you really want a one-turn knockout deck that's extremely versatile. I really do recommend picking up this Grand Maju deck because it is my favorite deck, and I didn't only put it here because it's my favorite. I genuinely think it's, you know, one of the best decks in a best of one format where, you know, you can play going second cards without really feeling bad about it. All right, guys, so that's it for today's video. If you guys did make it to the end and you did enjoy the video, I want you to subscribe, like, and comment. Hit that notification bell to join the squad, and comment down below again if you agree or disagree with any of the deck profiles that I did or the tech choices that I implemented in each profile. And I'm going to be doing more in-depth deck profiles throughout the week, so if you guys want to, you know, watch those for the top 10 meta decks that I did today, make sure you guys are subscribed so you guys do not miss those videos. Okay, so this was one hell of a long video, and I need to let you go. All right, so I freaking love you guys so much, man. This is Susu from Head to Head Battles signing out.
What's up, guys? If you haven't subscribed, make sure to click that button right there in the middle.
Also, if you haven't watched that video that YouTube is recommending you, it's probably crazy, all right? Go watch it. This is Susu from Head to Head Battles
Head to Head Battles
signing out.